We got breaking news out of the NFL. Saints coach Dennis Allen says Jameis Winston is doubtful for Sunday with back and ankle injuries, meaning Andy Dalton is likely to start at quarterback against the Minnesota Vikings. Allen also ruled out wide receiver Michael Thomas, who is dealing with a foot injury there as well. Now, the Saints and Vikings will clash Sunday morning at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. More of this breaking news when it comes to the Saints. My guy Ryan Harris checking in here. And, of course, let's start with the quarterback here. Jameis Winston did not practice for a third straight day. Your reaction to him being out on Sunday?
It's good long-term for the Saints that Jameis Winston is out. He's dealing with 4 fractures in his back. 4! What's he doing on that flight on the way to London, man? That's like a 9-hour flight, and you had 4 fractures in the back. What did they expect? And he's dealing with an ankle. But good news for the Saints, they've got Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, coming in. A perfect 10 for 10, by the way, in the preseason. 100% completion percentage. Hopefully it's that high for Andy Dalton, who still wants to be a starting quarterback. But good long-term for Jameis Winston's health and the Saints. But tough in the game that they're going to face against the Vikings on Sunday morning. Remember, Sunday morning in London.
Of course, Andy Dalton there, as you mentioned, the Red Rifle, but he won't have his number one target, Michael Thomas, doubtful for this game as well. You talk about it. When you don't have your QB1, you would like to have your wide receiver one, but what does this passing attack look like with Andy Dalton not having that number one wide receiver?
Well, Chris Olave came off a fantastic game, his best game as a pro last week. And then you got Traquan Smith, who practiced after leaving the game last week due to a concussion. So any fantasy footballers out there, make sure Chris Olave, he should have been starting for you already. But if you're a weekly fantasy football guy, Chris Olave is going to be getting the majority of the targets. Now, this is also a time for Alvin Kamara to step up his game too. Now, Alvin Kamara had limited practice both days this week, so hopefully he'll be good to go. But paging Alvin Kamara, hopefully they still got those pagers, Brandon, you know, like those lime green ones that you could see through. But Chris Olave and Traquan Smith, those are going to be the passing targets for the Saints as they try and beat the Vikings.
Quick question here, because when we look at the Saints here, of course, in the NFC South for the Buccaneers and going in, you know, we thought a lot of people actually taking them to come out on top in the title when it comes to that conference. How do we view the Saints so far? It's been a rough patch, of course. Jameis Winston not healthy, Michael Thomas, we know that. But how do we kind of view this team as we get kind of close to that, you know, quarter-century mark of the season?
Well, they're doing well, but not well enough, right? I mean, it's the story of Jameis Winston's career as well. Whether it's injuries or inconsistency, he has not been able to put consistent efforts on the field. And the tough thing for the Saints as well, they already lost a game to Tampa Bay. But I think that they're going to still be in the wild card running, and it really depends. This is where coaching comes into play. Now, Dennis Allen, second-time head coach, but also was the defensive coordinator for the Saints. But he has to manage the health of Jameis Winston and the rest of this team. And I had a total toe reconstruction. So what Michael Thomas is going through, those toe injuries are tough. Hopefully he can be back. And too often you see young coaches in the NFL prioritize weeks 4, 5, and 6 over 15, 16, 17. And this is a huge opportunity for Dennis Allen to protect his team and give confidence to other guys who have been developing in their system.
On the flip side, of course, the Vikings will face them on Sunday in London there. If you're Kevin O'Connell, how are you looking at these injuries maybe as an advantage here for the Vikings there?
Well, you want to be able to try some new pressure packages defensively if you can. Now, they did have Dalvin Cook miss a practice and then had full practice, so hopefully Dalvin Cook will play for the Vikings. But the Vikings have to continue to build. They had a huge comeback victory over the Lions, and that was something that they needed desperately. They were kind of with the Indianapolis Colts last week, saving their season with a win. And these Vikings, it's such a weird game. I was fortunate enough to play in a London game. It is so early, you barely know your name because you leave, and then it's about an 8-hour time difference. It feels like 2 days, and there's different smells and food and things like that. So the Vikings need this win in a big way, and this is a huge opportunity against a depleted Saints team who they may see in the playoffs if both teams continue on their trajectory for the season.
Ryan Harris there with the breaking news. Michael Thomas out and Jameis Winston doubtful. That means we'll most likely see Andy Dalton there starting at QB1 for the Saints early Sunday morning. Appreciate your time. Don't forget, of course, the conversation will continue. The Pick Six Pod. The guys always breaking it down the closer we get to the action this weekend. Want to check in, of course, with Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson, John Breach, discussing also what we saw yesterday, Tua's back-to-back injuries, and the Dolphins going forward. Also, Zach Taylor and the Bengals getting their second win in a row, but just how good is Zach Taylor when it comes to a head coach?
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.